Let's just go get some girls. Let's go get some girls.
A man after my heart, that's what I'm talking about, kid.
That wasn't just a throwaway line. It was a moment caught on camera. A 40-something-year-old Diddy grinning beside a 15-year-old Justin Bieber, calling him a man after my heart and laughing like they were just two bros planning a night out. But now, years later, that clip feels less like harmless fun and more like a breadcrumb in a much darker story. Despite their once seemingly tight bond, Justin Bieber has since distanced himself from Diddy, especially as the walls started. Closing in around the music mogul, the lawsuits, the allegations, the federal indictments, it all built up, and Bieber's silence grew louder. But then, something eerie happened. On May 13, 2025, the exact day Cassie Ventura, Diddy's ex, took the stand to share some of the most disturbing and painful testimony yet. In Diddy's criminal trial, Justin posted a bizarre Instagram video that stopped the internet cold. No caption, just a surveillance-style clip of him eating pizza, drenched in a red filter that looked straight out of a psychological horror movie. It wasn't a selfie, wasn't a music teaser, and definitely wasn't a casual post. It was weird, intentional, ominous, and it didn't take long for fans and conspiracy corners to start connecting the dots. You see, one of the allegations against Diddy is that he used surveillance cameras to record disturbing footage, not for art, not for security, but allegedly for control and blackmail. And now, here's Justin, years later, posting what looks exactly like stylized surveillance footage. Coincidence? Maybe. But the internet wasn't buying that. Stan Twitter went full CSI mode. TikTok sleuths dropped side-by-side comparisons. And the comments? A storm of concern, support, and speculation. One top comment read, "Interesting choice of food? I think many of us get it. Stay strong." Another begged, "Please testify against him. We're praying for you." Because this wasn't just a strange post. It was a statement. Or at least, that's how it felt. And when it comes to the hidden codes of celebrity culture and trauma, sometimes silence is the loudest scream. But that video wasn't the only unsettling thing Bieber did that week. Just days before, on May 10th, 2025, he posted a series of cryptic Instagram stories, 13 videos in total, each more concerning than the last. In them, he spoke about faith, integrity, and his struggles with fear, asking God to protect him from being exposed. And then, he deleted all of them. No explanation, no follow-up, just vanished into the algorithm void. Now ask yourself, why would someone post such vulnerable messages only to scrub them clean hours later? Unless those messages weren't meant to stay up, but to be seen by the right people at the right time. It wasn't long before fans started connecting these emotional outbursts to something deeper: trauma, processing, a silent cry for help, a way to speak without speaking. Suddenly, Bieber's social media wasn't just content, it was evidence. Evidence of a young man haunted by things he may have seen, experienced, or been made complicit in. Clips from his teenage years, especially those featuring Diddy, began resurfacing, and with a new lens, they felt different, disturbing, even predatory. There's that infamous 2009 video where Diddy proudly declares he's spending 48 hours with Bieber, emphasizing that what they're doing can't be disclosed, but calling it a 15-year-old's dream. Bieber, sitting next to him, laughs nervously and suggests, "Let's go get some girls," to which Diddy responds, "A man after my heart." On paper, it might have seemed like two entertainers joking, but on camera, it reads like something else entirely. The body language, the energy. It doesn't sit right, especially knowing now what's been alleged. In another clip, Diddy is seen teaching Bieber how to do the swag walk and inducting him into the Dirty Money crew, repeatedly touching him as Bieber looks visibly uncomfortable. It's not mentorship, it's manipulation. And then, there's the infamous Lamborghini promise. Diddy telling Bieber he'll gift him a luxury car when he turns 16. Sounds generous, right? Until you realize that's exactly how predators operate. Love bombing, gift giving, blurring the lines between affection and control. And if that wasn't chilling enough, Diddy straight up tells Bieber on national television during a Jimmy Kimmel appearance not to talk about what they do together. His exact words? "He knows better than to be talking about the things he does with Big Brother Puff," said with a grin, but landing like a warning. The more you watch, the more these clips stop feeling like entertainment and start feeling like red flags we all ignored. And it's not just the footage that's raising alarms, it's what people are saying now, out loud, without filters. The public conversation around Justin and Diddy has exploded, especially on platforms like Reddit and X, where threads are packed with speculation, survivor language, and reevaluation of everything we thought we knew. One Reddit comment with over 11,000 upvotes claimed that the odds of Bieber being a victim of abuse or inappropriate influence by Diddy are above 99.9%. Others pointed to the awkwardness in his body language, the overly sexualized environments he was seen in as a child, and the way he was paraded around like a trophy, forced to keep up appearances. One user wrote, "It's not just about what happened, it's about what was normalized. He was coerced into scenarios where saying no wasn't an option." Another compared him to young women who were exploited under similar power structures, writing that Bieber looked like Diddy's puppet, punished for disobedience and praised for submission. The theories got darker when people began referencing Suge Knight, the former death row executive, who, in a 2024 prison interview, alleged that Diddy not only groomed Bieber, but also arranged secretive trips with older men and molested both Justin and Usher. Now let's be clear, these are still unproven allegations from a controversial figure, and there's no hard evidence. But when multiple people start repeating the same story, the pattern itself becomes hard to ignore, especially when you look at Bieber's own lyrics. In his 2020 track Lonely, he sings, "And everybody saw me sick, and it felt like no one gave a fuck home." And later, "What if you had it all but nobody to call? Maybe then you'd know me, 'cause I've had everything, but no one's listening. And that's just lonely." He doesn't name names, but fans instantly connected those words to the early days of his fame, and to the silence that surrounded the abuse rumors. Was Bieber trying to say something back then? Was this his version of a diary entry, hidden inside a chart topper? Whether he was directly victimized or not, the message is clear. This is someone who feels haunted by his past. Someone who grew up too fast, in spaces too dark, under the influence of people who shouldn't have had that kind of access to a teenage boy. And now, as the allegations around Diddy gain traction, Bieber's social media isn't just being watched, it's being decoded. Every caption, every deletion, every post, all of it feels like breadcrumbs left behind by someone who isn't quite ready to tell the full story, but desperately wants to be understood. And if you thought this was just a coincidence or a string of social media flukes, think again, because the timing of all this couldn't be more symbolic. On May 16, 2025, just 3 days after Cassie's chilling testimony and Bieber's pizza video, Justin's reps issued a carefully crafted statement to TMZ. Although Justin is not among Sean Combs' victims, there are individuals who were genuinely harmed by him. Shifting focus away from this reality detracts from the justice these victims rightfully deserve. Now, on the surface, it reads like standard PR cleanup. Neutral, vague, well-intentioned, but if you've been following Justin for years, you know his team doesn't speak unless it absolutely has to. And this one, it read like damage control, like a disclaimer wrapped in legal tape. Fans were quick to call it out, comparing it to those classic YouTube apology videos where influencers sigh, stroke their cat, and avoid saying anything meaningful. Just enough to look concerned, but not enough to take a stand. But here's the kicker. That statement wasn't just responding to speculation, it was trying to silence it. See, what really set the internet ablaze wasn't just the pizza post or the deleted stories, or even the resurfaced clips. It was the sense that something bigger was bubbling beneath the surface. That Bieber was holding on to something, some memory, some truth, and trying to hint at it in the only ways he felt safe doing. Because let's be honest, if he were to speak directly, it wouldn't just be headlines. It would be war. The kind of war that ends careers, rewrites narratives, and shakes industries. And you can't fight a war like that unless you're absolutely ready. That's what makes these cryptic posts so haunting. They're not confessions, they're signals. Quiet flares sent up by someone still deep in the fog. And while his team may be running interference, the public's not buying it. Because once you've seen the patterns, you can't unsee them. Once the mask slips, even a polished PR statement feels like a half-hearted performance. Justin's silence, it's starting to sound louder than words. And the audience? We're all listening. What makes this even more chilling is that these aren't whispers from behind closed doors. The disturbing footage has been hiding in plain sight for over a decade. Public interviews, television appearances, music videos, all recorded, broadcasted, and ignored. It's like we were watching a horror movie without realizing we were the audience. One of the most jaw-dropping examples is the infamous 2009 clip titled Justin Bieber's 48 HRS with Diddy, where Diddy openly talks about spending 2 full days with 15-year-old Bieber. And when asked what they were doing, he chuckles and says, "We can't really disclose, but it's definitely a 15-year-old's dream." That one line, once brushed off as quirky showbiz talk, now sounds predatory. And when Diddy adds, "He's with me and we're going to go full," but crazy, it lands like a threat wrapped in a smile. From the outside, it may have looked like mentorship, a big-time mogul giving a rising star a shot. But the language, the tone, the sheer discomfort on Bieber's face, it tells a very different story. In one scene, Diddy calls him part of the Dirty Money crew and teaches him the swag walk, placing his hands on Bieber, who looks like he wants to disappear. Another clip shows Diddy promising to buy Bieber a Lamborghini at 16, an offer that sounds less like generosity and more like emotional leverage. It's the classic Predator script: gift, praise, isolate, make them feel special, make them feel owned. And then there's the moment on Jimmy Kimmel Live that still sends shivers down spines, where Diddy half-jokingly warns Bieber not to talk about the things he does with Big Brother Puff on national television. He laughs. The audience laughs. But Bieber, he just looks down. It's subtle, but it's loud. These aren't just cringy old clips. They're time-stamped warnings. We just didn't recognize them for what they were until now. And with every frame that resurfaces, the question gets louder. What else did we miss? Now, as the clips pile up and the public rewatch them with fresh eyes, the question isn't just about what Diddy did, it's about what everyone else didn't. Because these weren't private, hidden moments. These were broadcast, uploaded, circulated. A 40-year-old man parading around a teenager like a party favor, and nobody stopped it. Nobody asked why a global pop star was being filmed saying he couldn't disclose what he and an adult were doing for 48 hours. It was all there, in the open, and yet it took over a decade and a federal trial for people to say, wait, this wasn't okay. It's like watching someone post a burglary in real time, and instead of calling the cops, everyone compliments the camera angle. One Reddit user put it plainly, "It's not just about Bieber, it's about how the industry saw money instead of a minor." And it's a brutal truth. When Justin was rising, he was a cash machine. Tour sales, merch, sponsorships, he was everywhere. And maybe that's why nobody stepped in, because protecting the image was more important than protecting the child. Even his mother, known for her faith and protective nature, couldn't shield him from the machine once it started spinning. Another commenter added, "His mom was religious, not ready for this world. They sent a lamb into the lion's den." And that's what it feels like. That Justin wasn't just exploited. He was offered up. And now, looking back at the awkward laughter, the body language, the way he shrinks under Diddy's touch, it all starts to scream what it couldn't say at the time. This wasn't normal. This wasn't safe. And somewhere deep inside, Bieber probably knew it, but didn't have the words to name it. And now, in 2025, it's all starting to unravel. Justin Bieber is no longer that teenage boy. He's a grown man, a new father, and someone clearly wrestling with the ghosts of his past. Sources close to him say he's completely disgusted by what's come out about Diddy and wants nothing to do with the scandal. But that's not the whole picture. Privately, whispers suggest Bieber has confided in friends about a nightmare experience tied to Diddy, a memory so dark, so unresolved, that even now he hasn't fully processed it. Publicly, his team insists he was never a victim, that he was just a kid who happened to be friends with Diddy's sons, Quincy and Justin Combs. But the contradiction is glaring. The visuals tell one story and the PR tells another. And the public? They're not stupid. They can feel the disconnect. Maybe Justin wasn't abused in the way others allege. Maybe he wasn't assaulted or trafficked. But trauma isn't always so cleanly defined. Maybe what happened to him wasn't a crime in the legal sense, but it was still wrong, still damaging, still shaping the man he became. And now, as a father himself, holding his own innocent son in his arms, it's likely impossible for him not to think back, not to question the adults who failed him, the choices they made, the silences they maintained. And maybe, just maybe, that's why the posts are getting darker. why the faith messages appear and vanish, why the pizza video wasn't random, but deliberate, because fatherhood doesn't just awaken love, it awakens reckoning. And for Justin Bieber, it looks like the reckoning has finally begun. And while Justin's personal reckoning unfolds quietly, Diddy's legal storm is erupting in full view. If you've been anywhere near the internet over the past year, you've seen it. The man once hailed as hip-hop royalty is now standing trial in a case that could define an entire era of reckoning in the music industry. Federal charges, witness testimonies, explosive evidence. What started with Cassie Ventura's bombshell lawsuit in November 2023 has snowballed into something far more sinister. Diddy, the mogul behind Bad Boy Records, was arrested on September 16, 2024 in New York. Not just for misconduct, but for a series of criminal charges including racketeering, sex trafficking, and transporting individuals for the purpose of prostitution. This isn't tabloid fodder. It's a full-blown federal case with consequences that could lead to life in prison. Cassie's original lawsuit, alleging physical abuse, coercion, and sex trafficking over the course of a decade-long relationship, was settled shockingly fast for $20 million. But instead of ending things, it opened the floodgates. More survivors came forward. Over 60 civil lawsuits followed, dating back as far as the 1990s. That's not just a pattern, that's an empire built on silence and survival. And when federal agents raided Diddy's homes in March 2024, they weren't just grabbing documents. They reportedly found narcotics, unlicensed firearms, and over 1,000 bottles of lubricants and oils. No explanation, just more questions. This wasn't a man under fire for a single accusation. This was someone surrounded by smoke thick enough to choke a courtroom. And now, with the United States versus Combs trial underway in Lower Manhattan, the evidence is no longer whispered. It's being projected, dissected, and delivered directly to a jury. And at the center of it all is one harrowing truth. What Cassie described in her testimony was not just abuse. It was systemized exploitation dressed up in fame and luxury. And if even half of what she's alleging is proven true, Diddy's legacy won't just crumble, it'll rot. Cassie's testimony, which began on May 13, 2025, was nothing short of gut-wrenching. On the stand, she painted a picture that was both harrowing and heartbreakingly familiar. A young artist, plucked from obscurity, swept into a glamorous world that quickly turned into a gilded cage. She described the early stages of their relationship as seemingly platonic, beginning in 2006 when she was just 19 and signed to Bad Boy Records. But beneath the surface, a much darker reality was forming. She recounted how violent arguments spiraled into physical assaults, being slammed against walls, dragged, stomped, kicked, and then came the part that left the courtroom silent: the freak-offs. According to Cassie, these weren't just wild industry parties. They were carefully orchestrated, coercive sexual performances involving multiple participants, narcotics, and emotional manipulation. She said she participated not out of consent, but out of fear. Fear of losing her career, fear of retaliation, fear that saying no would mean disappearing. She described taking drugs to dissociate from the trauma, not to escape reality, but to survive it. And while the details were horrific, what made her testimony even more powerful was her resolve. She wasn't just recounting events, she was reclaiming her voice. Every word she delivered hit like a seismic wave, exposing a man who allegedly used his influence, money, and status to orchestrate a decade of dominance. It was the kind of testimony that doesn't just damage a reputation, it forces a reckoning. And for many watching, it confirmed what they already feared, that what happened to Cassie may have also happened to others, silently, in the same rooms, under the same lights, with the same chilling smile. But Cassie wasn't the only one to speak. As the trial progressed, more witnesses came forward, each one adding fuel to the fire. On day one alone, the jury heard from a Los Angeles police officer and a male review manager named Philip, who testified about his encounters with Diddy starting in 2012. These weren't distant recollections. They were first-hand accounts of a man who allegedly weaponized access, power, and reputation to silence and manipulate. The prosecution leaned into these details, portraying Diddy not as a flawed celebrity, but as the architect of a criminal enterprise that blurred the line between entertainment and exploitation. His defense team, led by Tenny Garagos, tried a classic pivot. They admitted to instances of domestic violence, but denied the larger charges of sex trafficking and racketeering. Their strategy? Paint Diddy as a man with relationship issues, not a predator. They claimed financial motives, were behind the allegations, suggesting Cassie and others were out for a payout. But that defense rang hollow, especially as Cassie's text messages were presented. Not as gotcha moments, but as evidence of how trauma survivors often maintain contact with their abusers out of fear, habit, or psychological conditioning. The defense's argument that inconsistencies in dates or affectionate messages somehow discredit her felt like gaslighting dressed up in legal jargon. Trauma doesn't operate on a perfect timeline, and survivors don't always walk away clean. They stay, they rationalize, they survive the only way they can. And when the prosecution highlighted that, it wasn't just a legal rebuttal. It was a cultural one, a refusal to let the courtroom be a recycling bin for old myths about victimhood. This wasn't about proving every detail with time-stamped receipts. It was about showing a pattern, a system, and a man who allegedly thrived inside of it. And as the trial unfolds, it's clear that the implications extend far beyond Diddy himself. This isn't just about one man. It's about an entire industry built on imbalance, about decades of unchecked power, normalized misconduct, and a culture that excused abuse as the price of fame. The courtroom may be in Manhattan, but the ripple effects are global. Cassie's lawsuit didn't just expose Diddy, it kicked open the doors. Her courage triggered what many are calling the enough Me Too moment for the music industry, a long overdue reckoning where the silence is finally being shattered. The veil is being lifted on the myth that this is just how the game is played. Because, let's be honest, if someone with Diddy's wealth, influence, and public persona could allegedly hide a criminal operation in plain sight for decades, then who else is operating behind closed doors? Who else is being protected by their connections, their lawyers, their PR teams? This case is more than scandal. It's a system scan, and the results are damning. It's about the culture that let this happen, the adults who looked away, the executives who prioritized charts over children, and the fans who were sold a fantasy while the reality was rotting backstage. If Diddy is convicted, it won't just be a personal fall from grace. It'll be a tectonic shift in how we view celebrity, legacy, and the cost of silence. And even if he walks free, the damage to his empire is already visible. His reputation, once unshakable, is crumbling. The partnerships are vanishing. The documentaries are being pulled. This isn't just cancellation. This is cultural exorcism, a purging of rot disguised as brilliance. And whether it ends in conviction or not, the truth is out now. And it's not going back into the vault. What's perhaps most disturbing about all of this is how public the darkness really was. These weren't private crimes committed in hidden rooms. Many of these interactions were filmed, broadcast, uploaded for mass consumption. And no one batted an eye. It's like watching a thief live stream their heist while the world applauds their editing skills. The footage of Diddy and Bieber wasn't buried. It was celebrated, passed around like cultural currency. Fans laughed. Journalists called it funny or quirky. But in hindsight, it's nauseating. Where were the adults? The managers? The label execs? The supposed protectors? Justin was barely a teenager, catapulted into stardom, surrounded by grown men who saw him not as a child, but as a commodity. He should have been home with homework and video games, not walking red carpets with a man who promised him Lamborghinis and whispered about undisclosed weekends. And the adults didn't just fail, they facilitated. Whether out of fear, greed, or ignorance, they let it happen. They let a child walk into the lion's den and then pretended not to hear the growls. One Reddit user summed it up with brutal accuracy. JB was a religious kid with no industry prep. They fed him to wolves. And that's what hurts most. That this was never just about Bieber. It was about every young artist whose innocence became collateral damage. Every child star who was celebrated while slowly being stripped of their safety. The pain echoes through every meltdown, every rehab stint, every cryptic post and emotional lyric. And as we look back, we're forced to ask the question no one wanted to before. How much of Justin's so-called bad behavior was really just the side effects of being chewed up and spit out by the same machine that made him? And now, that machine has come full circle, because Justin Bieber is a father. In August 2024, he and Hailey welcomed their son, Jack Blues Bieber, into the world. And while the internet was busy dissecting old drama and cryptic captions, something deeper was shifting inside him. Fatherhood has a way of cracking open old wounds, not to cause more pain, but to demand healing. When you look down at your own child's face, so innocent, so untouched by the world, you can't help but remember who you were before everything happened. Before the pressure, before the manipulation, before the masks. And that's what seems to be happening with Justin. The timing isn't just interesting, it's revealing. As Diddy's empire begins to implode and past secrets leak like broken pipes, Bieber retreats inward. The emotional tone of his recent posts has been somber, raw, almost spiritually heavy. He's not throwing accusations, he's not starting fights. He's looking in the mirror and trying to figure out how the boy he used to be turned into the man he is now. That pizza video? That wasn't a troll post. It was a symbol, a surveillance-styled mirror held up to the past, wrapped in red. The universal color for danger, for warning, for stop. It was his way of saying, I remember. Not with words, not with lawsuits, but with silence that spoke louder than any headline. And in that silence, millions heard him. Because when you grow up inside a machine that profits from your image while eroding your soul, you don't always get the luxury of clarity. But fatherhood has a way of reintroducing you to your own story. And now, it seems, Justin is reading his back, page by painful page. And if this all feels eerily familiar, it should. Because we've seen this kind of unraveling before. Not just with musicians, but with moguls, producers, and industry giants who once seemed untouchable. Think Harvey Weinstein. Think the Me Too wave that hit Hollywood like a tsunami, revealing decades of abuse hidden beneath red carpets and golden statues. What's happening with Diddy, and by extension, with people like Justin, feels like the music industry's version of that same reckoning. The curtain is being yanked back, the illusion is breaking, and for the first time, fans, media, and even former insiders are starting to ask the questions they once avoided. How did this go on for so long? Who helped protect it? Who knew and said nothing? Because this wasn't one man operating in secret. It was a network, a system, a hierarchy that traded silence for access and innocence for power. Justin Bieber's story, in this context, becomes more than just a celebrity coming-of-age tale. It becomes a case study in how an entire generation of young stars were set up to fall. The breakdowns, the overdoses, the rehab stints. We wrote them off as diva behavior or spoiled privilege, when in reality, they were symptoms of a deeper, more insidious rot, a culture that fed off their shine while ignoring their screams. And now, as Diddy's empire collapses, those stories are rising from the ashes. They're not just celebrity gossip, they're trauma testimonies. And whether or not Bieber ever chooses to speak directly, the subtext is already loud enough to echo through every headline, every lyric, every haunted silence he leaves online. And that's what makes this story different. It's not just about scandal, it's about memory, about silence, about what happens when the world finally sees what was always there, but chose not to name. Whether or not Justin Bieber ever confirms his experiences, his silence already carries the weight of 1,000 words. His deleted videos, his cryptic captions, his sudden emotional transparency. They all point to someone reckoning with a past that was more performance than peace. And now, as the legal walls close in around Diddy, we're forced to confront a truth much bigger than one man's downfall. That for years, fame was the perfect disguise for abuse. That power can dress itself in designer suits and hit singles while hiding the ugliest secrets. And that the people we idolized might have been victims all along, trying to survive in a system that never cared about who they were, only what they produced. As fans, as followers, as consumers of celebrity culture, we have to sit with that. We have to ask how many signs we ignored, how many moments we laughed off that were really cries for help. Because while the headlines might fade, the damage doesn't.